Episode 9 gave us what many fans had been dying to see, a redeemed Ben Solo fighting alongside his other half in Rey. After a triumphant victory over the Emperor, Ben gives his life to save the only living person that really matters to him at this point, as we see the last living Skywalker become one with the Force. Or at least that's what a lot of people think. As many of you know, I don't really buy that so-called death, but that's neither here nor there. I've read from quite a few people online that Ben had to die because of all the terrible things he had done, just as his grandfather Vader did. And, well, on the surface, I can see where those people are coming from. I actually couldn't disagree more. I acknowledge that they were both victims of terrible situations, and that Anakin never aspired to do the terrible things that he did. But regardless of his intentions, Anakin Skywalker did fail, as did Ben Solo. But his fall occurred in a very different way than his grandfather's. So let's just evaluate Ben and Anakin's turns to the dark side, and their actions from there to their eventual return to the light. Both characters were dealt very bad hands and were pushed to the darkness against their better judgment. They were tormented by the dark side since before they were even born, and constantly urged to give in to their hatred throughout their youth. But their turns are a little more different than some of you may realize. Anakin chose to go to the dark side out of desire to save Padme. Yes, that's a terrible position to be in, and I'm not saying that many good people would not have gone to the dark if it meant they could save their loved ones. But it's about what Anakin does during his transition that matters. As Vader emerges and Anakin falls, he attempts to kill his best friend in Obi-Wan Kenobi, nearly chokes his pregnant wife to death, assists in killing Mace Windu, and murders countless Jedi, including the innocent younglings. While Ben, on the other hand, was quite literally forced to turn to the darkness. There was no decision to be made. From his perspective, he was attacked by his uncle, Luke Skywalker, blamed by the surviving Jedi students for killing Luke and the others, which he did not do. And then this was the message that was delivered to the galaxy. He couldn't simply return to his parents and expect them to believe that the Grand Master of the Jedi Order and Leia's brother had tried to murder him in his sleep. He was already sent away because they thought he was too much like his grandfather. At this point, Ben had no choice but to join the only person he had left in Snoke. So now, regardless of how they got there, both men have embraced the dark side with the intention of ruling the galaxy. But I don't think it's any sort of stretch to say that Vader more openly embraced the dark side than Kylo did. Kylo did strive to be like his grandfather, but the light within him continuously pulled him in the other direction. Whereas Vader, for the most part, had eradicated the light within. It's only when he realizes he has a son who would otherwise be killed by the Emperor that the light is reignited within him. But up until this point, Vader is driven by his hate. He hates his former master for, well, what? I don't really know. As his training progresses, Anakin claims that Obi-Wan is holding him back, but that seems like a pretty irrational reason to hate someone who had done so much for him. But then, after his turn to the dark side, Vader's hatred for Kenobi continues to swell after he is left for dead on Mustafar. He feels betrayed by the Jedi and by Obi-Wan most of all. Granted, these feelings are driven by arrogance in his own abilities and his boiling aggression, but regardless of how his hatred came to be, he now hates the Jedi, he hates the Emperor, and he pushes Luke to give in to hatred as well. Yes, Kylo kills his father, but it's clearly not out of hate. I don't think he even uses that word one time in this trilogy. He flat out tells Rey that he didn't hate his father. The truth is that in that moment, Ben didn't feel he had any other choice. And as Snoke later says in The Last Jedi, the deed split his spirit to the bone. He was shattered by what he'd done. Snoke possessed him to believe that killing his father would free him from the pain the dark side had brought to him. And because he doesn't feel he can return to his family due to what they think he has done, Kylo Ren reluctantly kills his dad, and immediately regrets it. It continues to haunt him throughout the following two films, which Rey persistently reminds him of as she recognizes it's his greatest weakness. When Vader kills Obi-Wan, I don't see any indication of such remorse. In fact, I know there wasn't any, thanks to the books which tell us that Vader was filled with even more rage in the moments after Kenobi disappeared. He had focused all of his free time with the Empire on finding his old master, to hunt him down and destroy him. But instead, he had lost once again. Vader's primary job with the Empire was to hunt down and kill any surviving Jedi, or others who may pose a legitimate threat to he and Palpatine's reign. And he did this both effectively and ruthlessly. We don't yet know what happened with the surviving Jedi at Luke's temple, but we do know that Ben spared their lives at least once. Then when he has the chance to kill Rey both on Starkiller Base and in Snoke's throne room, he spares her life and actually asks her to join him. It doesn't really seem like Kylo's goal is to rule everyone, so much as it is to simply not be alone. I think it's pretty clear throughout this trilogy that he is searching for a sense of belonging beyond what Snoke has given him. The first time he's given that chance, he gets rid of his old master in favor of this girl, who could possibly provide him with true happiness. He has no idea if it will really work out, but the small sliver of a chance of them teaming up is enough for Ben. only he cannot go with Rey because of what his mother and the galaxy believe he has done. Vader does something similar with Luke, but as he says in The Empire Strikes Back, he wants to rule the galaxy as father and son. I don't detect from Vader any intent to suddenly give up his reign and bring peace and justice to the galaxy. So now we find ourselves in the final chapter of both stories. Vader finally returns to the light to save his son, and Kylo does as well to save... who? Some people may say it was to save Rey, but that's not actually accurate. And he's not turning to save his family because they're all dead. Ben Solo returns because he finally gains the acceptance and approval he needs from his parents. Yeah, they always wanted him to come back, but it was never really an option for him because, like I said, they did not know the truth about what happened on the night of his turn to the dark side. But Rey does. So this girl, whom he shares a deep connection with, provides the light at the end of the tunnel for him should he make it out alive. He will finally have somebody to support him again, to give him the belonging he had dreamt of for so long. He killed Snoke, and now he will join Rey to kill Palpatine. The galaxy is misinformed, but they will learn the truth about Ben Solo. Unfortunately for Vader, he didn't have this option. He really had become a terrible man who did unspeakable things to a countless number of people. His mother and the love of his life were dead. He had killed his friends and anyone else who was attached to his past. Once a good man at heart, Anakin was truly consumed by Darth Vader. He had forgotten who he was to the point that nothing really mattered anymore. The only belonging he had was with Palpatine. His only lot in life was to rule by any means necessary. It's a tragic story of a good man who folded under the tremendous pressure that was placed upon him. He is a victim, no doubt, but being the victim doesn't give him a pass for what he'd done. With Kylo, I know a lot of people are going to say he did similar things in his reign with Snoke, but let's think about it. Kylo can't actually be attached to the Hosnian massacre because it was Snoke who gave that order, and any defiance to Snoke's command would have been completely futile at that point. As far as we know, the only good people Kylo Ren killed were Han Solo and Lor San Tekka. Yes, these were terrible crimes regardless of his motives or reasons for doing so, but is 2 murders the same as hundreds? Outside of those 2, every single person we see Kylo kill in this trilogy is a bad person. He kills the Praetorian Guards in Episode 8, then at the beginning of Episode 9 we see him killing Sith loyalists who are guarding Vader's castle. And of course we have other evil characters like Snoke and the Knights of Ren. When Ben kills Snoke, he's letting go of the only support system he has, in favor of that small glimmer of hope Rey provides. That small chance that she may join him is enough for him to risk it all. He had been tormented for years, unable to return to his family, forced to conceal his compassion for them to the point where he must even try to convince himself that he doesn't need them. But his father's death proved that this was not possible. He felt neglected and betrayed, similar to the way Anakin felt. He was trained to hate, to kill, to become the embodiment of true evil. But unlike his late grandfather, Kylo Ren could not bury Ben Solo. His father was right. Snoke was right. Rey was right. He would never be his grandfather. Remember, I'm acknowledging that Anakin too was the victim of a terrible situation. But I'm also pointing out that his turn had more self-driven motives than Ben's did. And this isn't a knock on Vader or Anakin at all. In fact, for a lot of people that may make his character even cooler, because it paints a picture of a more menacing and evil person, something that Kylo never really became in the sequel trilogy. And that right there is what I think causes a big misunderstanding among fans. A lot of people make the mistake of viewing Vader and Kylo in the same light and as pretty much identical characters, but they're really not, and that's okay. Another thing that may seem small to a lot of people that I think is important to mention is the color of these 2 characters' eyes. Almost immediately upon Anakin's turn to the dark side, his eyes turn yellow, which indicates that he is fully committed to the dark side. He's overusing the power so greatly that it's actually causing his eyes to turn colors, something that only happens to the Sith. There's a reason Ben's eyes never turn yellow. I think this symbolism speaks volumes, and it's not very hard to see. But Snoke probably put it best when he said,
"You have too much of your father's heart in you, young son."
So as I've said, at the end of the day, these 2 both made bad decisions, whether out of feeling they had no other options, or out of love, or hate, or maybe something different altogether. Both stories are undeniably ones of tragedy. My only gripe is when people compare the 2 as if they were the same, because they're really not. Before The Force Awakens began filming, J.J. Abrams actually told Adam Driver he wanted Kylo Ren to be portrayed as a character who was actually the exact opposite of Vader. So while there are many parallels between the 2, comparing them as if they're identical really doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I digress. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section below, leave the video a thumbs up to support the channel, and may the Force be with you always.